Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel S with Sidz, and now coming to the second part of life processes. It is completely based on NCERT for the board examination point of view. If you have not watched the first part, then go and watch the first part first, then come to the second one. And if you are also understanding the nutrition part, now without wasting any time, let's begin the respiration part. Clear? This is completely based on NCERT. So before I'm going to start respiration, there are two differences between breathing and respiration. There are multiple differences, but the major differences will be two differences. So I'm going to that point actually. So without wasting time, let us understand. Breathing means actually it's a physical process. First of all, it is a physical processes. Physical processes means actually there will be no chemical reaction. Only physical things will be there. That means the involving of a gases exchange will be occurred here. And who are the gases by the way? Oxygen and carbon dioxide. So simply oxygen is getting into your body and carbon dioxide is actually coming from your body. It's a kind of physical process, right? This is actually called breathing. Because majority of the students are getting confused. What is the actual difference between breathing and respiration? Breathing is a complete physical process, whereas respiration, it is actually a chemical processes. And moreover, if I want to make it authentic, different books, it is written that biochemical process, that is also okay. Clear? So it is a chemical process involving chemical breakdown of a molecule. अगर कोई भी मॉलिक्यूल आपके बॉडी के अंदर जा रहा है वो कैसे ब्रेकडाउन होगा उसको कौन डिसाइड करेगा? कोई प्रोसेस, रेस्पिरेशन प्रोसेस. नाउ कमिंग टू द सेकंड पॉइंट, नो एनर्जी इज रिलीज्ड during breathing. It's a physical process because physical means physical reaction is there, so energy formation will be not occurring. There will be no energy will be released. But in the case of respiration, energy is released. ये कैसे रिलीज होगा अभी पढ़ेंगे हम थोड़ी देर बाद. Clear? And the energy is released in the form of ATP, which you already I think knew the full form, adenosine triphosphate. I'm going to explain in the later segment. Now these 2 points are highly essential to understand the concept or to understand the clarification difference between the breathing and respiration. Now coming to some of the more points through which you may get a, I would say that considerable idea or an authentic idea to understand the concept even better. No enzymes are involved during physical process, and here enzymes are involved. Now there must be a question some of the students might be thinking, what is the meaning of enzyme? You might have heard the word catalyst, right? So like in a chemical reaction, to proceed a chemical reaction, we are usually using some kind of catalyst to proceed the reaction, to make it further happening, right? They actually don't participate in the chemical reaction. They simply proceed the reaction. So similarly, in our body, something is actually happening. Something means a lot of things actually happening. And to proceed such things, because all things are complex way, right? Who are actually helping us? They will be called as enzymes. Enzymes are nothing else. They are simply the macromolecule present in our body. They are just proceeding the reactions actually occurring in our body. Clear? Now coming to the next point. Modes of breathing differ in among organisms. This is the star mark वाला point. जितने भी organisms है सबका breathing process same नहीं. Clear? That means mode of breathing actually different among different organisms. But if you comparison with respiration, then it's the process of respiration is quite same with respect to all organisms. It's quite same, okay? But breathing is not same because it's a physical process. Different organs will be responsible for breathing. If you talk about breathing, later segment is actually there. Now, it is voluntary as well as involuntary. कह सकते हैं भाई वॉलंटरी जो कि हमारे हिसाब से हो रहा है. एट द सेम टाइम इट इज एन इनवॉलंटरी बिकॉज इट्स ए कंटिन्यूस प्रोसेस. वी कैनॉट से इट इज कंप्लीटली वॉलंटरी. सो इट इज वॉलंटरी एज वेल एज इनवॉलंटरी फंक्शन. ओके, नाउ इट इज कंप्लीटली इनवॉलंटरी रेस्पिरेशन दैट इज नॉट इवन इन योर कंट्रोल. यू कैनॉट डू एनीथिंग. नाउ ब्रीदिंग, इट ऑकर्स बाय डिफ्यूजन. ब्रीदिंग कैसे होता है भाई? डिफ्यूजन के हिसाब से. डिफ्यूजन मीन्स व्हाट? The exchange of gases from higher concentration to lower concentration depending upon the environmental conditions. So that is the meaning of breathing. One more time, जो gases exchange होंगे environment के हिसाब से उसको हम क्या बोलेंगे? Diffusion बोलेंगे. Now coming to respiration. It occurs not only by diffusion, it occurs actually by oxidation. The word is coming at here, oxidation. Oxidation means actually किसी भी रिएक्शन में ऑक्सीजन का गेन होना या फिर एडिशन होना, मतलब कंप्लीटली ऑक्सीजन मर्ज हो जाना उस रिएक्शन में, उसको क्या बोलेंगे, ऑक्सीडेशन. कैसे हो रहा है इधर देखते हैं. ओके, नाउ दिस इज द हाईलाइट पॉइंट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक. Majority of the teachers will tell you to understand the flow chart because this is quite complex and quite easy at the same time. Once you understand the flow chart, how basically glucose is actually breaks down. Glucose is breaks down means which process? Respiration process only. Clear? And how basically glucose breaks down, we are going to understand right now. Focus it here. Breakdown of glucose by various pathways. There are in general 3 pathways. How many pathways? 3 pathways. First of all, you have taken glucose, and glucose formula C6H12O6. C6 means it is a 6 carbon molecule. Okay sir, no problem. And glucose will undergo breaks down. Whenever in chemistry or biology, if something is getting breaks down, that is called lysis. Lysis means breaks down. Who is getting breakdown at here? Glucose. So that's why the breakdown of glucose is actually called as glycolysis. The process is actually called glycolysis. 1 mark MCQ it may ask you. Okay. So when the glucose will breaks down, it will form a complexity of an intermediate. That means उसी का ही एक फॉर्म होगा ग्लूकोज का, जिसको हम क्या बोलेंगे, पाइरूवेट. क्या बोलेंगे, पाइरूवेट. But these things only occur at cytoplasm. Now again some students may be thinking, what is cytoplasm? Cytoplasms, I think you already came across in class 9th. Jelly like substances, fluid like matrix, they're actually present inside the cell, right? They're helping the glucose to breaks down to form the intermediate that is called pyruvate. And pyruvate is a 3 carbon molecule. That means the 6 carbon molecule is already broke down. 3 carbon molecule has been produced. And after completion of the pyruvate, pyruvate is ready to produce such things, but it depends on the amount of oxygen. Now after collecting the pyruvate, the biggest task is, by the way, whether the energy will be produced, or along with energy what other things will be produced. That is only on dependable with oxygen. If you take pyruvate in the absence of oxygen, then you are going to get ethanol, carbon dioxide, energy. One more time I am trying to tell you. First of all, you have taken glucose, which is a 6 carbon molecule, and the glucose will breaks down. Where it will breaks down? In cytoplasm. And after breakdown, it will form the pyruvate. And pyruvate is a complex of glucose only. That's it. It's a 3 carbon molecule. Okay, 3 carbon molecule. And when you are going to get the pyruvate, then from this pyruvate, you are going to get whether ethanol or lactic acid or carbon dioxide or वगैरह वगैरह things. Clear? But it depends on the amount of oxygen with pyruvate. If a pyruvate is reacting with some substances where actually absence of oxygen is there, means there is no availability of oxygen, then it must be occurring in which way? In yeast. In yeast it must be occurred. Then the product will be ethanol, carbon dioxide, energy. Energy I think we all understood. CO2 is also understood. Ethanol is actually called as, or commonly called as, ethyl alcohol. It's a 2 carbon molecule. The formula goes C2H5OH. It is one of the active ingredient to make any kind of alcoholic drinks. This is the meaning of alcohol actually. Okay, you are going to study in organic chemistry. Alcohol is a specific thing. Under that segment, you are going to understand what is ethanol. But right now, for your general point of view, I am telling you, ethanol is commonly known as ethyl alcohol. It is even being used for the purpose of drinking only, nothing else. Okay, and it is one of the active ingredient to make other drinks also. Clear? So if the question will ask you how to get ethanol from glucose, then your answer should be, first glucose should breaks down to form pyruvate in the presence of cytoplasm. Then this pyruvate undergoes in the presence of yeast, where there will be no oxygen, or you can say absence of oxygen. Then you are going to get your ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Okay. Now if the pyruvate is actually reacting with lack of oxygen, means oxygen is there but there is no sufficient amount of oxygen, some lack of oxygen is there. Where, in which way it is possible, by the way, in our muscle cells. When you are actually doing exercise, a lot of exercise, in a heavy exercise if you are doing, then the amount of oxygen is actually required to your body is going to be low as compared to normal conditions. So in such scenarios, we can say that lack of oxygen is there, and during that process the pyruvate is combined with the oxygen, which is actually not sufficient. Then by that time it will be produced lactic acid. Which acid? Lactic acid. Along with that, energy will be there, no problem. And the lactic acid formula is C3H6O3. So you need to write 3 carbon molecule will be produced, that is actually lactic acid. Again same question, how can we get lactic acid from glucose? So first of all, glucose will convert to pyruvate, pyruvate will react with in our muscle cells, that is lack of oxygen, then it will forms the lactic acid. Now coming to pyruvate, which is actually present, occurring in our body. This is the star mark point. So this pyruvate, when comes in contact with presence of oxygen, means sufficient amount of oxygen, where it will be present, by the way, in mitochondria. And mitochondria, you already knew that it is one of the basic question. It is also known as powerhouse of the cell. अगर सेल में कोई पावर हाउस है भाई धुरंधर की तरह, तो उसको हम क्या बोलेंगे? माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया. क्लियर? क्या बोलेंगे? माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया. So in the presence of mitochondria, also sufficient amount of oxygen, this pyruvate will convert to or formation कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, जो कि हमारे बॉडी से निकलता है, CO2, water in the form of sweat, you can say, that is also releasing, but which is actually remain in our body, that is ATP. And this point I was talking about at this particular segment. Energy is released in the form of ATP. Now this is our respiration process. This is the second one, is also our life processes, I can say that, but it is only possible during lack of oxygen. Clear? But all the time we cannot say that we are actually lacking of oxygen. Sufficient amount of oxygen is also there, right? So when the glucose is converted to pyruvate, then the pyruvate is converted to presence of oxygen, that is in mitochondrial presence. It releases CO2, H2 and ATP. And this is the complete pathway breakdown of glucose. You can remember through the flow chart or through point wise, it's up to you. Clear? Now, after knowing about the information of ATP, now some more extra point related to ATP. ATP, after all, this is your energy, right? And this energy will be requiring to your body to synthesize all chemical reaction. जो कुछ आपके बॉडी के अंदर हो रहा है उसको करने के लिए आपके लिए कुछ एनर्जी चाहिए. वो एनर्जी आपको कहाँ से मिलेगा? ATP से मिलेगा. जिस भी रिएक्शन को करने के लिए एनर्जी आपको जरूरत है, इफ यू आर रिक्वायरिंग दैट एनर्जी, देन दैट इज कॉल्ड endothermic process. Which process? Endothermic process. Endothermic reaction or endothermic process, you can say. So the point I have written it here, NCERT wala point. ATP is broken down, giving rise to a fixed amount of energy. Clear? And which can drive means वो proceed करेंगे further the endothermic reaction taking place in the cell. जो कुछ भी रिएक्शन आपके सेल के अंदर होगा उसको ड्राइव करने के लिए कौन हेल्प कर रहा है भाई? आपको ATP हेल्प कर रहा है. ATP. Clear? And what type of reaction is, by the way? Endothermic reaction, which is actually present or occurring in your body. But if somebody will ask you, respiration is a what kind of process? It is an exothermic process. Why? Because here ATP is released, and after collecting this ATP, you are going to drive this. This is your endothermic process. Two different things I said. Respiration actually process or chemical process where ATP is being released. This is called actually exothermic process. But the reaction actually occurring in your cell, in the cell of your body, that is actually endothermic reaction. I hope you understood. Now, this point I have written on the purpose of plant. I hope you understand. The direction of diffusion. I hope you understood diffusion at this particular segment. The same point I have just copied it here. The direction of diffusion depends upon the environmental condition and the requirements of the plants. It depends on the environmental condition whether diffusion is going to be endosmosis or exosmosis, like that. Clear? So this point is only for the purpose of plant. Now the last point is a 1 mark or 2 mark or even viva wala question, you can say, for your school examination. So during night or at night, when there is no photosynthesis, general thing, obviously there will be no light, no photosynthesis. So there will be no photosynthesis, right? Occurring CO2 elimination is the major exchange activity going on. That means रात में जब photosynthesis नहीं हो रहा है तो कौन सा गैस रिलीज हो रहा है भाई? CO2 गैस. And during the daytime CO2 is generated during respiration. So it's used up for photosynthesis. जो हमारे बॉडी से CO2 रिलीज हो रहा है वो कहाँ पे यूज हो रहा है? फोटोसिंथेसिस में, जो कि दिन में. अगर रात की बात करें हम प्लांट की केस में, CO2 भी रिलीज हो रहा है उसके बॉडी से. बिकॉज मेजोरिटी ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स आर थिंकिंग फ्रॉम प्लांट बॉडी CO2 is not releasing, only oxygen is releasing. No, no, no. CO2 is also releasing. But the difference is only, by the way, during daytime, CO2 is being used for the purpose of photosynthesis, and during night, there will be no photosynthesis. So CO2 can be visible or maybe observable during night time. So here it is mentioned the one point clearly here. During the daytime, CO2 generated during respiration, okay, it is being used for the photosynthesis. Hence there is no CO2 release. दिन की बात हो रहा है, दिन में. Instead of that, or rather than that, oxygen release is the major event at this time. So during daytime, oxygen is the major event from plant, and during night time we can say both are also releasing. So that's all about the respiration, breathing, and the flow chart of the breakdown of glucose and the introduction part of respiration, we can say. Not only introduction, I have concluded almost everything. Clear? In the next segment, we are going to discuss about the human respiratory system. How basically gases are exchanging in our body. Okay?